So, MAGA, in putting together a budget, this is what you voted for? Cutting programs that help with heating costs for elderly and disabled so that you can increase the budget for Kristi Noem and Homeland Security. Cutting programs that help impoverished people so we can buy more jets. Cutting all funding to NPR, PBS, Sesame Street for the same cost as Donald Trump's military parade for one day. Deporting children with cancer, but bringing in old YT people from South Africa as refugees. Turning away the poor, but you can buy a visa for millions of dollars. Putting people in prison with no due process of law, but pardoning people who are in prison who beat down police. Donald Trump's policies in general. Cutting medical research, cutting money to help dying children abroad so that the wealthy can have tax cuts. And you call yourself Christians.
Donald Trump didn't just wake up one day and decide to be divisive. That man was born in it, wrapped in it, and raised to weaponize it. You ever notice how some people act like Trump's racism is some sort of 2016 surprise? Nah, that man's been on brand since birth. So let's go back. His grandfather, Friedrich Trump, he came over from Germany on a boat in 1885. Illegally, might I add. He ducked military service back home and came here looking for a bag. Runs in the family. And he made that bag by running hotels, brothels, restaurants, all during the Yukon Gold Rush. So let that sink in. The same family screaming about illegals and traditional values built their fortune off of bootlegging and sex work. So we fast forward to Donald's daddy, Fred, the Trump who got arrested at a Klan rally in 1927. The Trump who built an empire on housing, but only if you were white. In the 1970s, Fred and Donald were sued by the Department of Justice for discrimination. They violated the Fair Housing Act. They marked black applicants with a C for colored. And when asked, Donald said they weren't discriminating. They were just being careful about who they rented to. Careful. That's how he framed racism. They settled out of court, no admission of guilt. But the damage was already done. Because what Trump learned from that was simple. If you say it with a smile and a suit, they'll call it business instead of bigotry. And Donald, he didn't break the mold. He polished it. So let's talk about what Trump knew about politics before he ran for president the first time. He knew absolutely nothing. This is a man who once said, and I quote, "Nobody knew healthcare could be so complicated." Bruh, everyone knew, except you. And he gets military advice from watching the shows, whatever that means. He claimed windmills cause cancer, said injecting bleach might help with COVID, said we should take the guns first and go through due process second. That's not policy, that's delusion with a microphone. And yet, people followed him. Not because he was informed, but because he made it okay to hate out loud again. So let's run the receipts, because you know I got them. In 1989, he took out full-page ads calling for the death penalty for the Central Park Five. In case you don't know, those were the 5 Black and Latino teens that were accused of a crime that they never committed. He even doubled down after they were exonerated, because it was never about justice, it was always about punishment. In 2011, he launched the birther conspiracy against Obama, said he needed to see the president's birth certificate, because a Black man in power, oh wait, that's too much. He had to question his legitimacy, had to remind America who was real and who wasn't. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He told 4 U.S. congresswomen of color to go back where they came from. He called majority Black nations shithole countries. And during a 2020 debate, when asked to denounce white supremacy, he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. They put it on their merch, and he said nothing. This isn't accidental. This isn't a gaffe. This is a man who knew exactly how to play to America's darkest instincts, because he was raised on them. Trump's racism isn't new. It's not performative. It's ancestral. It's rehearsed. It's profitable. And every time somebody says that's just how he talks, just remember, so did his daddy. So did his grandfather. And now he's teaching that very same language to a new generation. This was never about making America great. It's about making it go back to a time when only a certain kind of person got to be American.
To answer your question, yes. We went to a trade war with China just to cause all these issues, cause major panic in small businesses, some of which actually still can't even order the things that they need for the summertime, because by the time they get it, it's going to be too late, meaning we're hurting small businesses. We did all of that just to get back to a 10% tariff. I can tell you a lot of small businesses are going to be waking up this morning, banging their heads against the wall saying, I missed out on all my summer money because of this tariff war, which ultimately got us back to a flat line, 10%, pretty much the same thing that every other country is going to have. And yet, small businesses did unfortunately hurt. And I know this because I've interviewed many of them in which they were ordering things for the summer and they had to either cancel those orders or were getting ready to order things for the fall and only had another week window before that would have been canceled too. But yes, we're back to just a 10% across the board, and that's at least for the next 90 days. I'm assuming so they can negotiate, but I'm sure that the 90 days is just going to stick to a 10% across the board in the future. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please share my videos and follow me for more.
We have some breaking news. Trump says trillions of dollars are pouring into the U.S. because of his tariffs. But here's what he's not telling you. President Trump just posted this on Truth Social. In just 3 months, trillions of dollars and record numbers of jobs have been pouring into the USA. This is because of my tariff policy and our great November 5th election win. Sounds impressive, right? Except there's just one problem. There's literally no data backing any of it up. So let's break this down. First, tariffs are taxes. They're paid by American importers, not China. So any money pouring in is coming out of our own pockets. Second, the U.S. ports are shutting down right now. Not a single cargo ship from China is bound for California's biggest port. The port of Los Angeles is completely empty. Officials say they haven't seen this since COVID. Third, we are not in a hiring boom. Retailers, shipping companies, and manufacturers are already laying people off. If this is a financial revolution, where are the jobs? Final point, if trillions were actually pouring in, the White House would have receipts. But they don't, because this is, again, a political stunt, not an economic reality. But follow me on my Instagram and Substack. I'm posting everything there right now.
Donald Trump has completely caved to China in his own trade war as he's dropped the tariffs down to 10%. And China has responded in kind as both countries agreed on a 90-day pause while they work out a new trade deal. And this is absolutely a cave by Donald Trump, because he said these tariffs were going to bring back manufacturing and jobs and usher in a golden age. And he also claimed that there was nothing China could do to get him to drop these tariffs. And now he is caved to them. And the problem is, this is where we all knew we would end up. Donald Trump didn't have to do this to get China to the table. He has caused damage to our economy, created uncertainty, created permanent damages to small businesses. Many of them will never recover here in the U.S. and around the world, all for nothing. The President of the United States should be able to pick up a phone and say, hey, we need to talk. But Donald Trump can't do that. So he created this whole facade so he can eventually claim a win while getting nothing in return, and we pay the price.
Nobody knows more about taxes than I do, and income than I do.
Nobody knows more about construction than I do.
Nobody knows more about campaign finance than I do.
Nobody knows consultants better than me.
I know more about drones than anybody. Nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology, certainly, than I do. Nobody in the history of this country has ever known so much about infrastructure as Donald Trump. I know the H-1B. I know the H-2B. Nobody knows it better than me.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
Nobody understands the press, but I think I understand them as well as anybody.
I understand things. I comprehend very well. Okay? Better than, I think, almost anybody.
Nobody knows more about environmental impact statements than me.
And I think I know more about the environment than most people.
I know a lot about wind. I know a lot about wind.
You know, I know windmills very much. I've studied it better than anybody. I understand the power of Facebook. Maybe better than almost anybody. I know more about renewables than any human being on earth.
Nobody knows more about polls than me. I know more about courts than any human being on earth.
I know more about steelworkers than anybody that's ever run for office.
I know more about golf than Obama knows.
And, you know, in the case of Turkey and
the Kurds. I could go into a whole story because I understand it, I think, better than most.
Guy talks about, I know Scranton. I know that. Well, I know the places better. Nobody knows more about banks than I do.
Nobody knows more about trade than me.
Well, obviously, he doesn't know about nuclear weapons. I know more about nuclear weapons than he'll ever.
I understand the tax laws better than almost anyone.
Who knows more about lawsuits than I do? I'm the king.
I know more about offense and defense than they will ever understand.
Nobody even understands it but me. It's called devaluation.
I understand money better than anybody. I understand the system better than anybody. Nobody knows more about debt than I do. Nobody knows the game better than me. I know more about contributions.
I understand politicians better than anybody.
Nobody knows politicians better than me. Who knows the other side better than me?
I was the fair-haired boy. Nobody knows more about it than me.
I know a lot. I know more than I'm ever going to tell you.
This is the level of damage that RFK Jr. is doing, and Donald Trump sitting there not knowing what the hell he's saying when he just praises him. And all the other people RFK Jr. is helping to put in place. These people, besides having no understanding of science, I mean, the man has totally messed up anatomical terms and medical terms. And he's putting other people in there that aren't even medical professionals, but every single one of them in denouncing today's best medicine are snake oil salesmen. They've all been peddling their own shit to replace modern medicine and treatments that we know work and vaccines. And I think the hardest thing is all the advancements that have been made. There's so many different kinds of cancers. For instance, let's just take cancers. Some cancers that are growing because of environmental factors, where you're relying on the government to fund research at hospitals and other institutions that perform research. And they yield results. They uncover things so that when you're sitting there with your little child and the doctor's telling you your child has something that's not very common, but this is what the research is showing, and we're going to follow this treatment. It's relatively new, but it looks promising. This is what RFK Jr. is putting a stop to. So for the next 4 years, it's going to be really hard. What we have to rely on is private donors funding research. It won't be enough. Hopefully they can do something. I have friends who have family members that are relying on this research and emerging treatments. Meanwhile, the folks in charge have websites peddling shit that doesn't work, and they're making these decisions like, I can't even tell you how bad this is. Anyway, midterms. All we can do is put all of our energy and focus on sweeping at midterms in 4 years from now, and then also put all of our energy into spending at blue companies, blue companies.
It looks like Trump is turning into a socialist. Over on Twitter, he tweets this out. Drug prices to be cut by 59%, plus gasoline, energy, groceries, and all the other costs down. No inflation. Love DJT from Donald Trump Truth Social. Oh my God. Trump's wild 59% drug price slash claim, alongside promises of dirt cheap gas and groceries, sounds like a populist fantasy, not a policy reality. From Ed Grassenstein, he tried this in 2020 and it was overruled for being illegal. Trump is literally a Marxist for using price controls. As a matter of fact, he copied Kamala's campaign promise of price caps. Guess what, JD? When AOC becomes president by beating you, she should definitely implement Medicare for all for free. Mark my words. From Alan, what he's talking about is communism. Government dictating prices that private companies can charge. Yep, that's communism. Then we have poor Z here. How will the left find a way to be mad about lower drug prices? Will the left become big pharma shills now, protesting for skyrocketing drug prices and $3,000 insulin? And here's the response that we all need to be using right now. Nope, we love this awesome left-wing progressive policy. Thank you for joining the left and flip-flopping on this issue and joined our correct team. Hope you all keep doing it on more issues. But this might be my favorite red hat cry out that gets clapped back super hard. Trump could cure cancer and give every U.S. citizen $1 million, and the brainwashed leftist lunatics would protest. I can't imagine being that lost in hatred. Can't blame Trump. It's a choice they made. From Joseph, but Trump isn't curing cancer or putting money in our pocket. He's slashing funds for cancer research and effectively taking more money from us with his Trump taxes. So yeah, your fantasy is just a fantasy. Crows before bros, I'm telling you, crows before bros. I can't. This is insane. So if you want this shirt, it'll be in that left corner. And what do you think about our new communist government?
Do we need a strategic petroleum reserve when we are the number one producer of oil in the world? Absolutely. Let's just remind ourselves that the United States doesn't produce any oil. Companies do, right? And those companies own that oil until they sell it. Okay? And if there was a supply disruption, and that's when we chose to purchase oil from oil companies, instead of having a reserve, we would always be purchasing oil at extremely high prices when we needed it for an emergency. By not having a strategic petroleum reserve, we have zero ability to buy low, sell high, right? In addition to that, do we really want to rely on corporations when we're in a supply disruption? Do we really want to rely on them to quickly extract the oil we need? No, we don't. When we drew oil out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, we were able to draw 1 million barrels a day out of the reserve almost immediately. The United States can't produce, and oil companies can't produce an additional 1 million barrels a day anytime soon. So any supply disruption we would have would be prolonged by us not having a strategic petroleum reserve. And then there's this whole thing where we're not going to remain the number one producer of oil in the world forever. That's not a thing. This is temporary. I'd say in 5 to 7 years, we're no longer the number one producer in the world. And it could be sooner, but I'd say 5 to 7 years. Every time the oil market crashes, we have big production declines in the United States. And when oil prices recover, a wave or a flood of new investments come back into the industry and prop it back up, and we regain oil production. Those days are over. Those investment dollars are not going to flood back into the industry like they have in the past. Some will, but not like they have historically. And when you have nation states around the world that are dependent and reliant on the sale of oil, they're always going to keep their oil production propped up. Our oil here is produced by businesses. And there's going to come a time when it's not a great business. I do believe we will remain the number one natural gas producer and exporter in the world. I believe we will hold that for a long time. But our oil production is already in decline. 3 months of a Trump presidency, and we're already losing oil production. It happens very quick when it happens. So to answer your question, there's many reasons why we absolutely need a strategic petroleum reserve, regardless of how much oil we produce. Yes. Thanks.
Well, happy Monday morning. Start to another week. It's about 6:30 in the morning. It's raining out here in Northern California. Awesome. I was thinking last night and this morning that if there's one thing that the last election, the last year has taught me, is that I'm not very bright. I believe that there was absolutely no possible way heading into the last election that this country, our electorate, would re-elect a man who 6 months before Election Day had been convicted of 34 felonies for trying to improperly influence the 2016 election. Found guilty by a jury in a court of law. Evidence, an overwhelming amount of evidence. Never in a million years did I believe that we would elect a man who a federal judge described his conduct in a different case as meeting the legal definition of rape, being consistent with rape. Again, 2 juries on that one. Still a year later, he's still a convicted felon. Right now, he is still a convicted felon. I never in a million years thought that we would elect a man who, along with his 2 sons in their company, were found liable for a decade's worth of fraud. He still owes the state of New York over $600 million for fraud. He still owes that money today. I never thought we would elect a man whose own company at the end of 2022 was found guilty for 17 felonies related to fraud. I never in a million years thought that we would re-elect someone who had been indicted 91 times in 4 separate jurisdictions, including 32 felony indictments for violating the Espionage Act for stealing classified documents. And the majority of those 91 indictments having to do with inciting an insurrection at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, trying to overturn the 2020 election with violence. We all watched it live on television. We all watched it live. I mean, we reelected a guy who during his first term completely screwed farmers in the United States, had to give him $26 billion for a bailout, and the majority of those farmers voted for him again, even though he told them he was going to do exactly the same thing to them during his second term. I didn't see that coming. And Trump remained in office after January 6th for 2 more weeks. He didn't pardon any of the people who had participated in the insurrection at the Capitol, the people who pooped in their own hands and smeared it on the walls, because he's transactional and they didn't uphold their end of the bargain. They didn't get it done. They didn't keep him in office. I would guess that a majority of the people who were at the Capitol that day who didn't get arrested still voted for him. I never in a million years thought we would be in a position where we would re-elect a guy who documented, proven, objectively established, had lied over 30,000 times during his first term, but he'll be different in a second term. I never in a million years thought that we as a country would do that. I really believed before the 2020 election that women in this country would vote for the rights of other women. I was like, okay, this time, even a majority of white women will place their own bodily autonomy and the rights of their mothers, their sisters, their daughters, place those rights above their whiteness. I missed that one too. I never in a million years thought that a majority of our electorate would actually believe that a small group of billionaires would go to Washington to fight for the bottom 90% of this country. How could anybody possibly believe anything so unimaginably dumb? I never in a million years believed that the Supreme Court would grant this guy immunity from criminal prosecution in a decision that was issued less than 2 months after he had just been convicted of 34 felonies and had something like 55 other felony indictments still pending when they issued that decision. Never in a million years did I believe that that would happen. I did not believe that a majority of the electorate would still continue to vote against their own interests for a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a fraudster who still owed the state of New York $600 million for fraud, whose company had been convicted of 17 felonies, who had tried to overturn the last election, who is a liar and steals literally every single thing he gets his hands on, including their money, every chance he gets. Buy an NFT, buy a little piece of my suit, buy an autographed Bible, buy these shiny tennis shoes, buy a fake Les Paul that has a bald eagle painted on it. A billionaire grifting middle and low income Americans at every turn. And then that brings us to today. I never thought our electorate would vote to eradicate Medicaid, which apparently overnight House Republicans announced they're going to cut almost $900 billion from Medicaid over the next 10 years. Because billionaires aren't the problem. It's poor people. Huge numbers of whom voted for Donald Trump. Never in a million years did I think people would be dumb enough to be like, tariffs are amazing. Tariffs are going to make the United States wealthy. Tariffs are going to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Oh, I'm dropping tariffs on China by 95 percentage points. That's how amazing tariffs are. I'm doing away with 95 percentage points of the tariffs against China. I'm not very bright. I never in a million years believed that our electorate was this incredibly dumb and gullible. I was wrong.